Looking dead in each other's eyes, Eiji witnessed his girlfriend wrapped around another man's arms. To her, he was once her childhood friend, clingy and annoying. But now she lies, claiming that he's nothing more than just an abusive boyfriend. A message pings on his phone from Miyuki. She apologizes since something came up with her club activities. Not wanting to make a fuss, or MC replies kindly, assuring her that it's fine and wishes her good luck. Introducing Aono Eiji, feeling a bit down since it was supposed to be their special birthday date. Miyuki Amada, his childhood friend, now girlfriend, had said yes when he confessed to her last Christmas. To Eiji, she's like someone from a dream, graceful and admired by everyone. If they hadn't grown up together, he doubts he'd ever have the courage to speak to her, let alone be dating her. It's been about 6 months since they became a couple. Still, they haven't kissed. Not because Miyuki isn't interested, but because Eiji is simply too shy to take that step. Still, Eiji never imagined she would actually blow off their very first date. But rather than let the disappointment ruin his day, he decided to take a walk to clear his mind. Eventually, his feet led him to the street where the movie theater stood, the one they were supposed to visit together. As he passed it, he imagined being inside with Miyuki, sitting close, with their hands gently intertwined. The daydream almost made him smile, but he quickly shook it off and continued walking through the crowd. His steps eventually brought him to the district he hadn't meant to visit, the Love Hotel area. Realizing where he was, Eiji froze, face flushed red with embarrassment. His imagination betrayed him again though. Just him and Miyuki, alone in a love hotel. He could almost feel her fingers tugging on the back of his shirt, pulling him closer. But snapping back to reality, he cursed himself for being such an idiot and turned to head back. That's when he heard them, the voices of a couple behind him, but one of them stopped him in his tracks. His eyes widened. That voice, it was Miyuki. There she was, arms wrapped around another guy. His heart sank. Stunned, Eiji called out to her, uncertain and shaken. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw him, and she stuttered his name. Both of them spoke at once, confused and demanding to know why the other was there. But things escalated too fast. Eiji grabbed onto her wrist in frustration, making her flinch, and her sideman wasn't about to let that slide. Swinging without hesitation, sucker punching him straight in the jaw, sending Eiji flying into a wall. Walking over, her new man snarled, asking what the hell he thought he was doing with his girl. But Eiji managed to mutter that she's the one who's cheating. Mocking him, her new man asked if he was serious, if he was some kind of stalker or something. Then he turned to Miyuki, urging her to say something as well. After all, she was just telling him how she dated Eiji out of pity, since he's her childhood friend. Or how about because he's boring? Even mentioning how gross his sweaty hands are when he touched her would be fine too. Eiji's voice trembled, calling out to her with a weak smile, desperately wanting her to deny it. But her new man wanted to watch him fall even further into despair, mentioning that that's what she tells him in bed anyway. Eiji's stomach turned. Horrified, he asked him to say it again. Miyuki's new man asked her to make a choice, either break up with him or Eiji. And in a moment of desperation, she calls out to him, begging him not to throw her away, since if he leaves her, she wouldn't be able to go on living. Eiji stood frozen, dead across his face, unable to say a word. But that silence was all the other guy needed. With a devilish smile, he placed his hands on her head, satisfied. Or so you'd think, but it wasn't enough for him. He needed to hear her say it, clearly and directly, to tell Eiji exactly what he means to her. Miyuki hesitated, but to her, he's just a childhood friend, an abusive ex. Her words hit him like a sledgehammer. But this guy wasn't finished. He wanted to utterly crush him. demanding that she says it again, looking him in the eyes this time. Miyuki turned to Eiji, whispering that she was sorry. She doesn't even want him to talk to her at school either. And with that, Eiji's world cracked. And from that day on, his once happy everyday life began to slowly fall apart. When Eiji finally made it back to his family restaurant, he opened the door and was greeted with warmth. To them, it just seemed like he'd come home a bit early. His mother cheerfully offered to make him lunch, but he wasn't in the mood. Without saying a word, he declined and walked straight to his room. Since then, he'd barely moved from bed. He spent his days staring at nothing, just waiting for time to pass. No matter how many times his mother came by with food, he just didn't eat. But it got even worse. He kept seeing it over and over. The same nightmare haunted him night after night. Miyuki lying in bed with another man, pouring her heart out to him. Her words echoed cruelly in his head. How clingy, disgusting, and pathetic Eiji had become. All he could do was stand there, a prisoner in his own dreams, helplessly watching, begging them to stop. Each time he jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat, it had gotten so bad, he became afraid to fall asleep. Still, he forced himself to get up. As he washed his face and got ready, he knew he couldn't hide forever. He had to go to school. His friend jumped up from behind, slinging his arms around his shoulder and asking casually if anything new had happened with Miyuki. Eiji laughed awkwardly, but then he saw her right in front of him, smiling as if nothing had ever happened. His mind flashed back to a memory. Miyuki had once asked if there was anyone he liked. Embarrassed, Eiji dodged the question, wondering why she would even ask. She said he never talked about that kind of stuff, then teased him, asking if she should just become his bride, but laughed it off quickly, saying she was only joking, while Eiji blushed and told her to cut it out. Back in the present, Eiji reached out towards her, desperate to touch something real, something familiar. Miyuki turned, noticing him right behind her. But before she could even say anything, someone stepped in front of her, demanding that he doesn't come near her again, calling him an abusive creep. Eiji froze, confused. He still didn't understand what was happening. Miyuki's friend grabbed Miyuki's arm and pulled her away from him, mentioning that if he kept on stalking her, she wouldn't allow him to get away with it. Shortly turning to Miyuki, gently consoling her while they walked away, leaving Eiji shattered, making it home in silence. Back in his room, he collapsed into bed, sinking deeper into despair. But then his phone buzzed, again and again, flooded with notifications. He checked the screen and noticed that the message was from an unknown account, reading, "Die, you're disgusting." And more kept coming, one after another. The voices in his head began to echo. Confused and panicked, he wondered what was happening. He didn't do anything. Then, overwhelmed, he hurled his phone across the room, all while more notifications came in. The next day, he didn't want to go to school, but he went anyway. As he reached for the classroom door, his hands trembled. He whispered to himself that it's just another normal day and slid the door open. The room was full of chatter, but everything felt muted to him. He sat down quietly, but soon enough, the whispers started again. The soft but unmistakable murmurs from yesterday now surrounded him. He whispers under his breath that he didn't do anything. But then a sharp voice cut through all the noise, telling him to shut the hell up, since Miyuki's friend thinks there's no way she'd lie. Apparently even Kondo, her new man from the soccer club, saw it himself. So it's two school celebrities against one freak. Anyone would know who to believe. Eiji sat there, sick to his stomach. He didn't even want to hear it anymore. Why, he thought, why did it all have to turn out like this? The world kept moving, everyone else went on with their lives. Yet Eiji sat alone, eating lunch in silence. Just then, another message buzzed on his phone. This time, it was from his club. Practice was cancelled for the day, so there was no need for him to stop by. It had only been a few days, yet it felt like something had crumbled. There was no one left in his class he could rely on. Still, even though the club president had already mentioned the cancellation, Eiji decided to go anyway. Maybe someone would be there. Maybe he could talk to them, ask for help. But as he approached the clubroom door, he heard voices inside. They had lied. They'd cancelled it just to keep him away. His heart sank. He had worked so hard on a manuscript for them, pouring hours of effort into something he thought would bring them together, and they just threw it away. To them, he was nothing. Desperate, he thought of going to his homeroom teacher. Maybe she'd still be in the classroom. Maybe she'd listen. But as he neared the door, he heard yet another conversation. They had beaten him there, again, getting ahead of him. Since now, even his teacher was on board, having Miyuki's side. And just when he thought the day couldn't get any worse, he opened his locker and found a note inside, threatening him that if he went and snitched, they were going to the shop. Later that evening, he arrived home, drained. His mom glanced up from the kitchen, asking if there was no club today. But Eiji forced a smile and lied, saying they were cancelled last minute. She encouraged him to go lie down since he hadn't been feeling well lately. Eiji hated burdening them. Ever since his father passed, his mother never cried, not even once. She always smiled, always held things together. And his older brother, he stepped up, doing everything he could to protect the family and the restaurant in their father's place. Eiji smiled faintly. He couldn't fall apart. He had to endure this hell, even if it meant keeping the people he loved from being unhappy. Even if it broke him, then so be it. Elsewhere, Miyuki hadn't been sleeping well either. She tossed and turned, unable to stop thinking how everything spiraled out of control. Why did things have to turn out like this, she wondered. Why couldn't it all just be a dream? If Kondo hadn't been there that day, she might have run to Eiji. She might have told him she didn't want to break up, because the way he was being treated now, it almost brought her to tears. But she didn't get to cry. After all, she was the one who broke things. It all started as a harmless girl talk, silly conversations about love and relationships. She had been happy with Eiji, but things weren't progressing as she had wanted. Her friends misunderstood her doubts and assumed she wanted something more, something better. So they introduced her to Kondo. He was popular, charming, and experienced. Everything Eiji wasn't. She tried to decline at first, but Kondo was relentless and undeniably attractive to her. He carried himself with a sense of confidence Eiji didn't have. His compliments, his attention, it all slowly broke down her resistance. And then one day, they kissed. Everything she'd once wanted to give to Eiji, Kondo took. And then, they went too far. Lying in bed together, guilt crept into her chest. Taking the opportunity, Kondo consoles her, since this was all Eiji's fault. If he had made a move, she wouldn't have been there with him. To Kondo, she didn't do anything wrong. In his eyes, Eiji had failed as a man, and she wasn't to blame. But Kondo simply wrapped his arms around her and whispered that they should do it again. And while she might have felt guilty at first, there was also something else. A part of her that didn't want to stop. A part of her that liked it. And once she became dependent on Kondo emotionally, there was no going back. Not long after, Kondo casually mentioned to Miyuki that they could hang out since his club had a day off. She then stuttered, mentioning that the 30th was actually Eiji's birthday. But Kondo didn't care. He could always ask another girl instead. Miyuki clutched her bedsheets tightly, desperate for him to change his mind. But to him, it was always the same. She was still putting her man above him. It made him feel like an afterthought, and he was tired of chasing her. So he told her to end things with Eiji so that they could both finally be happy. In her heart, she hoped Eiji would one day forgive her. At least, that's what she was banking on. She had spent over 10 years by his side, convinced she'd eventually marry him. But somewhere deep inside, the woman inside her whispered otherwise. She wanted to confess, to tell everyone she was the one who lied, the one who cheated, but she was too afraid. Afraid of losing everything she now had. The next day, Eiji opened its locker, only to have more death notes spill out. The rumors hadn't stopped. If anything, they had gotten worse. As he walked the halls, sleep-deprived and hollow, he opened his classroom door with heavy eyes, and then he saw it. Pasted on the wall, a photo of him and where he lived. They had taken it too far. Now even his family was in danger. Bursting the door wide open, he rushes out the classroom, but standing before him was the last person he wanted to see. No other than Kondo stood before him, asking him how it felt to be a criminal. Eiji had only one question for him. Why would he tell such a lie? His answer? Because it's fun. Since losing his girl and everything else makes for a great show. He continues that it's Eiji's fault for thinking someone like him could get Miyuki, as well as how he should just drop out already, because he's not done yet. He absolutely loved wrecking people's lives. Defeated, Eiji fell to his knees. Everything had felt hopeless, and he had nothing left. As he closed his eyes, the world around him went dark. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying in the school's infirmary. The nurse looked over and gently said she'll inform his homeroom teacher, but Eiji didn't say much. It wouldn't have mattered anyway. No one was coming to help him. They'd all take Miyuki's side anyway. He couldn't even tell his mom or brother, not after everything they had already gone through. Just one more year until graduation. But at the same time, how was he supposed to survive for that long? He decided to check his phone once more and froze. It was a message from the president of his club. Since after what he did to Miyuki, they've decided to kick him out of the club. It wasn't true. He hadn't done anything, but it was too late. One by one he realized all his friends had blocked him. Tears welled in his eyes and began to fall, until he had nothing left to cry out. Eventually he stepped out of the infirmary, telling the nurse he was fine. He wandered the halls numb, making his way up a flight of stairs before stopping to sit alone. He thought to himself that he'd only need to get used to it. Eventually, his heart would go numb, so if he could just endure it, maybe he'd be okay. But the whispers returned, leaving him with no other choice but to think that maybe if he were to just jump, then maybe it would all go away. He found himself walking. The rooftop door creaked open, and there, standing in the breeze, was a girl, someone he'd never seen before. She turned towards him, softly, calmly, and just like that, in the moment when he thought there was no escape, everything began to change. Yo, it's your boy Noodles, and if you hate Miyuki as much as I do, then check out part 1 to 3 of He Cut Ties with his childhood friend who bullied him, and I'll see you on the other side.